Okay, now you're okay. Pain and pleasure are considered to be opposite sides of a same coin until the coin lands bang on its edge to introduce the oxymoron that is BDSM. The stigma around the act of BDSM is quite common, owing predominantly to the gross and misinterpreted portrayal of the practice in the media. The general consensus with BDSM is that it is something that is unnatural, non consensual, and even considered immoral by some people. So let us try and explore the myths and stereotypes around the practice of BDSM and try to understand it better. Let us begin with the most important and obvious question people ask when it comes to BDSM. Why? Why would anyone submit to pain, bondage, humiliation, subjugation, or mutilation? Like, isn't it just odd? And this particular question was also asked by Zussman and his colleague peers in 1998. To say masochism is antithetical to what most would consider normal operation of the self. Masochism is just another part of BDSM. Uh, uh, so going on, masochism is quite antithetical to what many people would consider a normal operation of the self, and its benefits are not apparent. Like, why would anyone want to get hit, isn't it? Although perhaps simply a consensual game between adults, the role of a submissive in BDSM is objectively quite dangerous. Being harmed physically by another who wields any object, sometimes barehanded, is normally unwise. Rationality thus seems to weigh against engaging in this kind of a game, isn't it? Isn't it quite mind-boggling why people would do such kind of a thing? But congent answers to this enigma may include the idea that engaging in BDSM play as a submissive is a safe way to creatively escape the high stress and demands of everyday life in today's fast paced society. Letting go of control and experiencing pain or extreme sensation for the benefit of a natural endorphin rush. And this is not what I say. It was rather suggested by researcher Williams in 2006. BDSM play also enables people to explore different dimensions of themselves and in doing so enact more authentic selves. And this was suggested by researchers Herbert and Viewers in 2014. And Turley and their colleagues in 2011 argued that based on their phenomenological research, BDSM practitioners can experience other non sexual, yes, you heard me right, non sexual. Ha! What is this? Like, but let's go on. Non sexual positive outcomes of their play, which include self exploration and a sense of well being, strengthen the relationship, and the opportunity to experience their bodies in different and exciting ways. Still feels odd, isn't it? Because how can something that is painful be pleasurable at the same time? Isn't it like, isn't it odd? Isn't it like an oxymoron that something which is painful is pleasurable at the same particular time? But Dante Alighieri, the famous philosopher, has also said the path to heaven began through hell itself. Accordingly, in subspace and birthing consciousness, pain is not equal to suffering. Although we use these words quite interchangeably, they are not equivalent to each other. In fact, sometimes pain can be the path to experience pleasure both during birth and during a BDSM session. And this is still not said by me, but by researchers Pythagora in 2017 and Zussman and Peers in 1998. Um, going so do you get the idea that BDSM can be somewhat like a birthing consciousness because if you look at it, a mother is in pain while giving birth, she is never suffering because she knows what is at the end of it is quite beautiful. And moving further, additionally, molecular imaging and animal studies document the important role of opioid and dopamine systems in modulating both pain and pleasure, suggesting a common neurobiology structure for both. So, what are these jargons? What is opioid and dopamine systems? So these things are somewhat like one which induces happiness and the other one which induces sadness. Yes, and it has been found that by molecular imaging it has been found that both these systems are important in modulating both pain and pleasure. So it says that both of them have a common neurobiological structure, and this is said by Leknes and Tracy in 2008 when they researched upon it. Do you know that the media has been a major culprit in distorting the pain that a submissive experiences? There is a vast difference between the theatrical portrayal of BDSM as is seen on porn websites and what it really is. When performed by nurturing dominants, BDSM is never abusive. And this is not said by me, but it is said by people me and my research partner Ashley have interviewed. You can access these interviews as podcasts on this very page. So, uh, nurturing dominance and BDSM not being what it is shown on porn brings us to a very important question. How is the boundary between BDSM and sexual abuse demarcated? So to understand that, we must first study the roles of a dominant and a submissive in the act of BDSM. Herbert and Weaver in 2014 found evidence disputing the stereotype that dominance in BDSM reflects an abnormal desire for control, whereas submissive preferences indicate an abnormal desire to relinquish control. Although dominants did report higher desire for control than did submissives, but both were still within the normal range of this variable as indexed by the desire for control subscale of the Shapiro control inventory. So what does this mean? In other words, this means that people performing BDSM are just like you and me. They are normal. They do not have abnormal preferences for uh, giving control to someone or controlling someone. Furthermore, it has also been identified that the act allows people to sidestep daily sociological norms without actually breaking them. And we all know what kind of a pleasure we get by breaking small rules. And of course, they too are people, so they too will like breaking rules. And if it is consensually, then I don't think that there's any harm for it. Furthermore, moving ahead, a display of BDSM could also result in a peacock's tail style showing off of strength and dominance, showcasing fearlessness, strength, trust, and reliability. And this was said by Alcock in 2013. While this theoretical explanation goes in line with the displays of dominance during BDSM by male individuals, it does leave a gap in the explanation for females who are sexually aroused by lower ranking males, isn't it? Like, you would now ask a question that what about males who are not alpha or those who like to submit to their women, and what about dominatrixes, right? So however, recent literature has found that hierarchically disparate pairs tend to have increased reproductive success, but regardless of the gender of the dominant or the submissive. So this pattern has been theorized to be caused by within pair cooperation and communication. So it does not matter who the dominant figure is, but it just matters that one of them is dominant and one of them is submissive to in order to have increased reproductive success. And it happens because of cooperation and communication within themselves. Social rank, particularly in sexual activity, is an important factor even in the case of animals. For example, in the case of primates, high social rank affects the rate of pubertal development, leading to more dominant and higher ranking females developing mature developing and maturing more quickly than their lower ranking counterparts. This was said by Hawley in 2008. Pardon me. This is also observable in baboons and rhesus monkeys, where rank clearly affects the timing of the first evolution, and pardon me again, where rank clearly affects the timing of the first ovulation. Rank also strongly affects the expression of adult sexual behavior. The changes in rank can affect the production of ovarian hormones, which in turn can change the occurrence and the type of sexual behavior, and are extremely flexible in concordance with whether or not the female is sexually motivated in the moment. This flexibility in sexuality allows sex to serve important social purposes like affiliation in human couples. And much of this was suggested by Carter in 2017. You can find the link for this paper in the description below, or you can find it on this very page itself. For going ahead, now that we are talking about BDSM and we are deep into it now, and we have talked about dopamine and opioid structure and neurobiological structures. There's also something that there's also something a new a rather new theory that has come into the news recently. According to the transient hypofrontality hypothesis done by Dietrich and Al-Shawaf in 2018, when activities such as exercise increase the demands on the areas of the brain responsible for basic sensory and perceptual processes, autonomic nervous system regulation and motor output, the brain does not receive adequate blood flow to meet competing demands. So what does all of this jargon mean again? So all this means is that, like, when you're performing physically when you're performing physical activities like exercise, which have increased demand for a particular part of your body, or your brain uh, does cannot receive all the blood flow that it requires, because the brain down regulates these the certain regions of it to increase blood flow to the priority areas of demand. So for example, your brain might down regulate blood flow to a certain region and instead give it to your leg if you're exercising your leg. Or research suggests that the frontal cortex and the prefrontal cortex of the brain, that are the front parts of the brain, are consistently down regulated in this way. So it's done regularly to these parts. And according to Ambler and colleagues in 2017, Del Giorgio and their colleagues in 2010, uh, these activities or these actions can produce time distortions in disinhibition from social constraints and changes in focused attention. Additionally, people experiencing transient hyperfrontality have reported reductions in pain, decision making activity, logical capability, and memory loss, along with increased feelings of floating and peacefulness. So, you might be aware of meditation, right? So, this is somewhat in line with meditation. And according to Ambler et al., that is Ambler and his colleague and their colleagues in 2017, an empirical study also suggests that submission during a BDSM scene, perhaps the subspace, is also associated with an altered state aligned with Dietrich's transient hypofrontality hypothesis. So this means that when performing a BDSM scene, submissives may tend to uh, experience an altered state of mind, or experience the transient hypofrontality. And I think these gives enough reason to why so as to why people perform BDSM acts, because of course sexual motivation to do something different with their lives. And I've already explained the hypofrontality hypothesis and the biopsychological phenomenon of it. Thank you.